ngare dang zo ji da ada ji ka so nawa kana kare chungye mes di ko ma shi bare na dine ma ji ma 참제 di ane nyomo ba ji ge 참제 ko res the nyomo ba de kana series at di ko ma shi ri do.
So good afternoon. So this morning we continue to look at the minds of death, as sub-outline, and we looked at what we looked at included what appears to the mind as death nears. And so now we'll continue from where we concluded, and we'll look at the process of death for those who are afflicted. So turning to the text, the big paragraph at the top of page 175, in the middle, at the time of death, the attachment to a self that they have long been familiar with befalls everyone until perception. Yeah, it's the mental factor differentiation or discrimination becomes unclear. So until differentiation becomes unclear. First, just to say, the Tibetan includes many sub-outlines, which the editors exclude. So in this big paragraph, we're now starting with the third sub-outline. So I'm mentioning this because it otherwise appears as if we are going in a sequence. Because we saw at the end of the previous sub-outline that when the mind becomes subtle, virtuous and non-virtuous minds come to a stop and become unspecified minds. Then we're starting now with a new sub-outline, but it's not meaning that this comes subsequent, the sequence continues. Because as we see here, at the time of death, the attachment to self that has long become familiar with befalls everyone until differentiation becomes unclear or discrimination becomes unclear. So this may well be referring to a time before when the coarser consciousnesses are still manifest. So that is likely. So therefore, I'm just as a translator trying to emphasize that this isn't moving in a sequence, because now it's a new sub-outline. So we're going back a little bit in terms of the sequence. Okay, that point's made. Now to give Genla's commentary. So the order the Tibetan starts with the word, everyone, befalls everyone until. So everyone refers to those who die with a virtuous mind, as well as those who die with a non-virtuous mind, as well as those who die with an unspecified mind. So all such beings, all such ordinary beings. So that's the meaning of the term everyone. And then when the differentiation or discrimination becomes unclear, so this mental factor of differentiation, it differentiates one thing from another. So it's merely being able to identify this as not being that. So there's not necessarily labeling here, but it's able to differentiate between things. So that is when that becomes unclear. So when those consciousnesses are now those coarser consciousnesses are fading, and one no longer is able to differentiate. So that's the until. So until that point, because the English and Tibetan, the order is different, the attachment to a self that they have long been familiar with. So until this point, when the person is no longer able to differentiate one thing from another, their attachment to the self that they long have been familiar with is present. So in this period of time, whilst there is still the mental factor of differentiation, and the person is able to differentiate one thing from another, they will have their attachment to the self, which is something that they have long been familiar with. When differentiation becomes unclear, in other words, the person can no longer distinguish one thing from another, then, now the next sentence, and just in this sentence, I'm changing the order of some of the words because it will be clearer. So I'm just moving some words from the beginning to the end of the sentence. After that, under the influence of attachment to yourself and thinking, I am becoming non-existent, you take delight or joy in a body. So this is what happens when differentiation becomes unclear. So when differentiation becomes unclear, then after that, under the influence to attachment of self, one thinks, I'm becoming non-existent. So because the differentiation, one is no longer able to differentiate or distinguish this from that, then one thinks one is becoming non-existent. Then one takes delight in a body. Reading the sentence again. After that, under the influence of attachment to yourself thinking, I'm becoming non-existent again. So the differentiation has become unclear. You're thinking you're becoming non-existent, and then you think, then you take delight in a body. So this body you're taking a delight in is the body of the next, the body of your next state of existence, not the body of this life that you're leaving. And this then is made clear in the next sentence. That is the cause for reaching the intermediate state, or the bardo. So when you're thinking, I'm becoming non-existent, when you take delight in a body, this is referring to the body of in the intermediate state. And so what the body that one is delighting in isn't the body that one is about to leave, what's about to become a corpse, but a body of the rebirth one is soon to take. So if one is going to be reborn as a human, one is taking delight in a bardo body, which is similar to that of a human. Or if one is going to be reborn as an animal, one is delighting in the body of in a bardo body, or an intermediate state body of an animal. Here we see the process of death and transmigration into the intermediate state, which and it's been emphasized that there is this attachment to yourself. Now, continuing to look at another class of being, still with attachment to yourself. While attachment to yourself also arises in stream enterers and once returners, so they also have attachment to yourself, they analyze it with wisdom and eliminate it rather than acquiescing to it. Just like, for instance, a strong person beating someone weak. The stream enterers and once returners are Arya beings, which means they have directly realized selflessness. Whilst they have directly realized selflessness, they still have attachment to a self. So when death comes, they too have attachment to the self, but they do not acquiesce to it. Why? Well, two reasons. Firstly, because of their long familiarity with the wisdom realizing selflessness, their attachment to the self is far weaker than otherwise. Secondly, because of their because of having the wisdom directly realizing selflessness, they are able to use their wisdom and eliminate it or abandon it. So for these reasons, they do not acquiesce to the attachment to the self, although there is attachment to the self. Stream enterers and once returners are Arya beings, so they have directly realized selflessness. The usage of these titles, of these names, points to the level of realization of selflessness that has been attained, or level of realization that they have attained. So they have not abandoned the desire realm afflictions. So they have realized selflessness directly, but they have not abandoned the afflictions of the desire realm together with their seeds entirely. So these beings, or beings with this quality of mind, are found amongst Arya beings of the hearer type and the solitary realizer type. So when beings of the Tibetan practitioners gained a direct realization of selflessness, then they have this level of realization of stream enterer, once returner, and others, pointing to the level of abandonment of the desire realm afflictions, which in these two cases have not been entirely abandoned. Okay, so first let me just correct myself as a translator. So these, where are the names here? Stream enterers and once returners, they have not abandoned the desire realm afflictions. And certainly not the seeds either. So I think I said that earlier, but just to be sure, they haven't abandoned the desire of afflictions together with the seeds. But they have realized selflessness directly. And then to come to the analogy, they are likened to a strong person beating someone weak. So this is referring to the wisdom direct realizing selflessness that they have developed. It can easily overcome the attachment that arises in relation to the self. Just like someone who's very strong is easily able to subdue someone who's weak. It won't take them much effort. So similarly, a stream enterer and once returner, it doesn't take them much effort to deal with this attachment in relation to the self. Again, because the attachment is so much weaker due to their long familiarity with realizing selflessness and due to the strength of their wisdom that directly realizes selflessness. Then the final sentence. That attachment to a self does not arise in non-returners. So now here's another term. So we had already stream enterers and once returners, now non-returners. Non-returners, they, for them, whilst they haven't abandoned the seeds of the afflictions either, they have the seeds of the afflictions either, attachment does not appear to them. So, which is what it says, attachment to yourself does not arise to non-returners. So non-returners are more developed than stream enterers and once returners. Okay, I just missed, as translator, missed a word. So the non-returners, they have abandoned manifest desire realm afflictions. So they haven't abandoned the seeds, that will come later, and then there'll be arhats. So this sequence of practitioner is the stream enterer, a once returner, a non-returner, and an arhat. And the difference between the non-returner and the arhat is that the arhat has abandoned the seeds of the afflictions, whereas the non-returner has abandoned manifest afflictions, but not the seeds. So now we come to the next sub-outline from where the heat withdraws. So this is the third. We've looked at conditions for death, the minds of death, and now the third from where the heat withdraws. In those who have cultivated non-virtue, the heat first withdraws from the upper part of the corpse and dissipates down to the heart. In those who have cultivated virtue, the heat first withdraws from the lower part of the corpse and dissipates up to the heart. In both cases, the consciousness transfers or transmigrates from the heart. We had this expression earlier as well. Those who have cultivated non-virtue, what this specifically means is that those whose mind of death is non-virtuous. So those who have cultivated non-virtue, perhaps through a long familiarity or intentionally cultivating a non-virtuous mind at the time of death, they are who are being referred to here. So beings whose mind of death is non-virtuous. So for them, the heat withdraws from the upper part of the corpse. So this is from the upper part, it's from the crown and dissipates down to the heart. So what this means is the heat withdraws down to the heart, meaning that from the crown one becomes cold and this cold progresses down towards the heart. And for those who are dying with a non-virtuous mind, as the text explicitly says, the heat withdraws from the crown down to the heart, so therefore one's becoming cold from the top of one's head down to one's heart. then the cold or the heat withdraws from the bottom, so from the soles of one's feet up towards the heart. So then one becomes, having now a cold head and torso, then one becomes cold from the feet up towards the heart. In those who have cultivated virtue, so again, what this means is those who are dying with a virtuous mind of death, again, either due to a strong habituation to virtue in the life or through having intentionally generated virtue or being helped by others to generate a virtuous mind at the time of death. So for them, the heat withdraws in the opposite sequence. The heat withdraws from the lower part of the corpse and dissipates up to the heart. So the heat withdraws from the bottom of the feet upwards to the heart, including the up from the feet and the hands and the lower part of the body up to the heart. So that is the sequence by which one becomes cold. First one's feet and legs, and then one's, midriff, and one's arms become cold, leading to the heart. And then from the crown of one's head, the heat withdraws, so one becomes cold from the crown of one's head down to the heart. So it's the opposite sequence from before. So in both cases, and not reading from the text, in both cases, then the heat gathers at the heart. So what one should understand here, the usage or the meaning of this word gather. So normally if we gather things together, we take many things and we pile them up and we have one large quantity of things gathered together. This isn't the case here. It is more like if water evaporates from a vessel and the water becomes less and less and less and less. There's still water, but the moisture in the vessel is just becoming lower and lower. It's not like if you gather a lot of possessions and it's all gathered together in one place. It's not like you're taking the entire heat of the body and you're putting it in one place, so you've got suddenly now a very hot heart. It's not like that. The heart rather retains the heat of the body, but it's not getting hotter because you're gathering all this heat. That isn't the case. So what is gathering at the heart is the heat of the body in the sequences described, as well as the wind energies, or energy winds. They're also gathering at the heart, and then what rides the energy is the consciousness or consciousnesses. So that all gathers at the heart: the heat, the wind energy, and consciousness. So it's the gathering together of heat, energy, and consciousness at the heart. It can be likened to a balloon being deflated. You know, a balloon, when it's got air in it, you can pull it in various directions, but when it's deflating, it all gathers together, coming down to one point. So it's something like that. If one has an inflated balloon, so we sometimes see these performers, and they can twist this balloon into a variety of shapes. So you can make an animal with a head and ears and all this kind of thing. But at the end of the trick, when they deflate their balloon, it all comes down to one point. So the inflated balloon that can be pulled in various directions is like our body moving with its wind energy in various directions, and our various thoughts moving with the wind energy in various directions, various thoughts coming and going, our body making various movements. So this is like an inflated balloon that can be manipulated into various shapes. But just like when that balloon deflates, it comes down to one point, it gathers in one place. So too, at the very end of life, then the heat, the wind energy, and consciousness all gathers together in one place. Now this consciousness then that comes, this consciousness now that gathers into the heart, this is the subtle mind of death. And it can also be, in this context, we use the term subtle mind of death. In the context of the 12 links, it's the karma of becoming, or the karma of existence, but it's the karma of becoming. And this is the final moment of death, when the being transmigrates now from their corpse into the bardo. This is the actual moment of death. So this is in this third part. In both cases, the consciousness transfers from the heart. Transfers or transmigrates. So this is this term poa. Transfers, transmigrates from the heart. Read in the last two lines. And just I'm going to be changing the word blood, which is the literal Tibetan, to what I think is more accurate, that of ovum, throughout, because it comes up a lot from now. The place where the consciousness first enters into the semen and ovum becomes the heart, and where it eventually exits is that very place it first entered. So reading that of these two parts, that first half again. The place where the consciousness first enters into the semen and ovum becomes the heart. So we're talking about the end of life now, but this is referring to the very beginning of life. So where the semen and ovum, or the fertilized ovum, that becomes the heart. So here, whilst the word heart is used, the meaning isn't necessarily the organ, the heart organ, but rather heart as in the essence. So the essence, the essence. So that is like the most vital point, the essential point, essence or essential point. That is the meaning of heart here. So the fertilized ovum, that is the very essential, the very essence of the body that will grow. So from this very essence, then the body will grow and expand. And in this new body, it is this very essence is the center of where the various channels of the body meet. So here in the sutra presentation, so we're talking about the coarser channels through which we'd say veins. So let's say stay with veins. It's the same Tibetan word. So this is where all the veins and arteries, that their very central point is this essence. So the body then expands in directions from where the fertilized ovum is. And then that same point is where, concluding the sentence, where it being the subtle mind of death, eventually exits, is that very place it first entered. I'm not entirely sure the presentation of biologists is in terms of when the fluids come together and the fetus starts to grow. If they identify this point, this essential point, this essence, as where the heart organ also grows, perhaps so. But yeah. So this final clause, where it eventually exits. So here, consciousness is exiting the body, and at this point, it enters into the intermediate state, or the Tibetans well-known bardo. So the being leaves their body and immediately arises in or is born into the bardo. And it takes on a new body now in the bardo. So this word bardo, or in English intermediate state, it literally the same Tibetan word in other contexts would be used for in between. So in between this and that. And that is how it is used here. In between one life and the next, there is this place of birth and then death, which is the intermediate state, or the bardo. In other contexts, then this word bardo, intermediate state, is used to refer to different time periods. It can refer to the period from which one is born into this life and lives this life, and when the life ends. So what we'd normally call life, in some context, there is the term intermediate state or bardo applied here. So there are that and a number of other situations where this term is utilized. But we only use it, so I'm saying that because you may come across this used in different contexts. But here, it is only used in this one context of between rebirths. So this in-between state is in between rebirths, where one takes a new form, is born into a new form, which one then later dies from, and then enters into a new life. So this word bardo, is used in many different circumstances, because it means between two things, so between. So we could have, for example, this teaching period. It starts and it ends. So this period of time, in English we here translate it as until. So from when it starts until it ends. So this would be called bardo. So you could call it the bardo of the teaching period. And you could talk about the bardo of the working day, which is from when the day starts until it ends. So again, in English, here we translate bardo, not as intermediate state, but as until.
The bardo simida tisina barsi orang tisina barang. And the barasi ruang the chikagel kishe shoga ne bonda barasi ajla ruwa. The bardo lamne de chulu mission dai tanga the bardo kishe da here.
Okay, so in colloquial, then the two particles, or bar and two syllables, or bar and do, aren't both used, but just the one, the first one, that of bar. So we'd use, but it would be translated as until, so for this teaching period or for a working day, and so forth. In the Dharma context, it's also used, but then with both syllables, bar, do, and there it can be used in a variety of contexts. So it can be for the period, we'd normally say the period of life. So when you're born into this life until this final moment of death, that can be called an intermediate state, a bardo, because it's in between birth and death from this life. So it is used in this way, although we don't tend to use it in that way. Another way it's used is for the in-between period between falling asleep and waking, so the dream state. So there is an intermediate state of the dream state. So it's also used in that and other contexts. But again, we only use it in the one context, that of the period of when this one physical life ends, and the in-between state before the next life starts, physical life starts. So now we're starting the fourth of the 5 subdivisions of how you die and are reborn, how the intermediate state is reached after death. So here we look at whether the intermediate state starts immediately at death, or if there's a pre-intermediate state. So the first sentence, death and the intermediate state are reached from the place the consciousness exits, as explained above, without a break, just like the swing on the armature of a scale. So the analogy is just like the swing on the armature of a scale. So these are these old-fashioned scales used quite broadly before the invention of electronic scales. So these you probably know. When you're weighing something heavy, then there is a scale on the top along which the weight slides. So this is what is referenced. The meaning of the analogy is that when the breath finally leaves the body, so when actual death comes, immediately then there is a rebirth in the bardo, or in the intermediate state. Immediately the death is followed by rebirth. So this first sentence, the key point that's being made, is that there isn't some period between death and the attainment of the intermediate state, or birth into the intermediate state. This happens simultaneously. So now to talk about the kind of body a being has in the bardo, the next sentence. And I've just changed one word in the second sentence. A being in the intermediate state has complete sense powers such as eyes, and has the body of whatever it will become in the following rebirth. Its vision is unobstructed, like the divine eye, until it takes rebirth, and its body is also unobstructed, as though possessed of magical powers. When the person finally dies, and they arise in the intermediate state, they arise in a body similar to what the body they'll have when they take their next rebirth. So if a person dies and they are propelled towards a rebirth as a human, whilst they are in the intermediate state, and prior to taking rebirth as a human, they will have a body that is similar to a human. Similar meaning that it's in general like a human. If one saw it, you'd recognize it as a human, but not necessarily the same as how this person will look when they are born as a human. But it would appear as being the body of a human. And if the person was to be born in the animal realm, then they would have a body of an animal of the type that they are going to be born as. So, for example, if they're going to be born as a kangaroo, then in the bardo, their body will have the general form of a kangaroo or of a cow. So, just to be clear, the texts don't use the illustration of a kangaroo, but this is my thinking. So, but what is the case is that one takes a form similar to the rebirth that you'll take. You're not in the bardo looking like how you will be in your next life, but just in general. And likewise, if you're going to be born as a god in the bardo, you'll have a form that is similar to a god. And then the second part is that one has complete sense powers or sense faculties. Next sentence. So the bardo being, their vision is unobstructed like the divine eye. So the divine eye refers to, something that can be attained by those who have clairvoyance, whereby their vision, their sight, is not obstructed by form. We'd say they can see through forms. So this all intermediate state beings have. They have their sight is similar to a clairvoyant who has developed this capacity to see through matter, see through form. So this is their quality of sight, and they have that until they take rebirth. And it continues, and its body is unobstructed as though possessed of magical powers. So similarly, the bardo being can travel immediately to wherever they wish to go. So if the thought is there to go to a particular place, they immediately are at that place. It's not like for ourselves that we are limited by form, whereas the bardo being form does not obstruct them. Let's talk about this term unobstructed. So it appears twice. The first time it was translated as flawless, but the word is unobstructed. So unobstructed sight, unobstructed body. So for ourselves, we know our movement is obstructed. We can't move through matter. Also, it takes considerable effort and time to get anywhere. Whereas for the bardo being, merely through having the thought to be somewhere, they are there. And they are not obstructed in any way to get there. And so it has these two qualities of being unobstructed and being immediate. So if the bardo being thinks to be somewhere, they are there. However, there is one place that a bardo being cannot go. It cannot go merely by wishing, and can only go there by propulsion of their karma, and that is into their mother's womb. So that is the one place that's out of bounds. They can only get there but through the power of ripening karma. Then they will go to the womb of their mother. But otherwise, their movement and sight is unobstructed. The next sentence. It is seen by the intermediate state beings of similar type. So this refers to what the being in the intermediate state, or who the being in the intermediate state can see. And they can only see other intermediate state beings of their type. So let's say it's a being, someone dies, and they're going to be reborn as a human. So they take rebirth in the intermediate state in a human-like body, in a body similar to a human. And they can then see other human-like intermediate state beings. They can perceive each other. What they cannot perceive is other intermediate state beings that are going to be reborn in different realms and have the body of beings of a different realm, such as animals or god beings in the bardo. Nor can they perceive beings who are not in the bardo. So bardo humans, they can only see other bardo humans because they are the same type. They cannot see other bardo beings or humans or animals. So this means that, for example, we cannot perceive them, but they can perceive those of the same type as themselves. So therefore, we, as humans, we cannot perceive beings in the intermediate state, but intermediate state beings can see other intermediate state beings of the same type. However, and now reading a bit further, it is seen by intermediate state beings of similar type and by the flawless divine eye arisen from meditation. So this then refers to flawless or unobstructed divine eye arisen from meditation. So this then is a human being who develops calm abiding and goes on to develop, we had it above, the clairvoyance of the divine eye. So this human being who has attained calm abiding and has developed the clairvoyance of the divine eye, they can perceive bardo beings of all types. Translation of this term flawless, here it is correct, flawless divine eye. Now reading on, it is set forth in the treasury of Abhidhamma that once any being has reached the intermediate state, there is no diverting it into some other rebirth. So it is set forth in the treasury of Abhidhamma that once any being has reached the intermediate state, there is no diverting it into some other rebirth. So in other words, when death comes and the being moves into the bardo, the intermediate state, and they are doing so in this in-between state before taking rebirth, say as a human, then they'll be born into the bardo state with a body similar to a human. That situation cannot change. When they take rebirth from there, it will be as a human, and this cannot change. Likewise, if they die and they are to be reborn as a god, they will take birth into the bardo state, the intermediate state, in the form similar to a god, before dying in the bardo state and taking rebirth as a god, and it will be as a god. And so too for the lower realms, such as a hell being and so forth. So this is the view as presented by Vasabandhu. But then, reading on, Asanga disagrees. So Asanga, so we've got, however, the compendium of Abhidhamma also explains reversals, or better translated, also explains that changes do occur. So we can conclude here for this week. So we'll start then at the very top of page 176 next time. So we started to look at the intermediate state. So we point out the key point to take away from what we've looked at this weekend is that it's imperative that when death comes, that our mind is virtuous. And this, ideally, is something that we should direct our mind in, the direction we should direct our mind in, or have our those surrounding us, our companions at the time of death, assisting us to send our mind in a virtuous way, helping us to generate refuge, love, and compassion. And going together with this, not to die with an afflicted mind, and those around you to not be sources that lead to the arisal of affliction, such as anger or attachment. To the extent that one trains well in minds such as refuge, love, and compassion, so that these are minds that spontaneously arise within, or that arise relatively easily, then one can have confidence at the time of death with all the challenges that one is facing, as this life is ending, that one, independent on a lifetime's training, will be able to generate refuge, love, and compassion at this crucial time. So we can conclude there, but if there's some questions, then feel free. There's questions? Okay. Gabasu. Sudampo.
Just
So I don't know everyone's name, but lady there.
just with that ability to go anywhere in the bardo that you think of immediately. So you could have the thought to go to a pure realm and then instantly be there.
So the bardo being can move by power of the thought in an unobstructed way. Can they go to a pure realm? Should they have that thought? Unfortunately, that ticket needs to be purchased before. so no, they can't, because for that the causes need to be accumulated. So they can't, at a wish, go to a pure land.
Yeah, that is Buddhist.
Okay. Liam?
How prayers and preachers help someone if they've already, the compelling karma's already taken place when they're in the bardo, if that can affect their rebirth.
So then how do prayers and pujas help someone who has already died and is in the bardo? So it's difficult to talk precisely. From this, that will come. So one can really only here talk in general sense. But for virtuous activities to have an impact on the bardo being requires that there is a connection between that virtue and the bardo being. The stronger the connection, the more impact there will be. The weaker the connection, the weaker the impact will be. And just to say, from how Genla is saying, nowhere in this should we understand there will be a strong impact. So when you're talking about this variety of strength, it's really a variety of strengths on the not strong side, on the weak side. So what will determine the strength of the imprint, the strength of the impact, is, for example, if the person, before they die, they are, say, for example, when I die, use my wealth, my possessions, to accumulate virtues, sponsor pujas, to make offerings, and so forth. So if they direct their mind of generosity and thereby accumulate virtue, there is a good connection there. They have done something to create that connection. So that is one possibility. Another possibility would be where the bardo being and those making prayers for them have a good connection, such as students to their teacher or the converse, teachers to their students. And here, to emphasize this point, that there is a relationship between the bardo being and those who are making the prayers during the puja. So the quality of that relationship there will impact on the quality of the result that follows. So like this. Okay. Venerable Stable?
My question is about the immovable karma or unspecified karma that has neither a positive or negative outcome. What about when in the meditation where you're achieving shamatha, if you've actually generated bodhicitta beforehand, wouldn't that influence that virtue? Wouldn't that influence so it becomes virtue? That karma so it becomes virtue. Well, can bodhicitta alter unspecified karma?
Okay, can bodhicitta alter unspecified karma? Unspecified karma is in the context of the threefold, virtuous, non-virtuous, and unspecified. Immovable karma is in a different set of three, virtuous, non-virtuous, and immovable. This is a long way to say, unspecified karma and immovable karma aren't the same.
Oh, but we had the translation was that it can be immovable or called unspecified.
Shouldn't be. Is that in the book?
No, you said, when we came to that section, you said it could be...
Neutral.
Oh.
Neutral. Because it's most commonly called neutral, virtuous, non-virtuous, and neutral. But so then when I explained the meaning of unspecified, I said neutral then specifies ethically neutral. But nevertheless, I'd like to give Gilna's answer because for others it'll be clearer too. So immovable karma is the karma that is immovable in that it comes from having developed karma abiding, and that karma can only ripen as a propelling imprint to rebirth in the relevant form or formless realm. Level of the form or formless realm. So it's immovable in that it can only ripen as a propelling imprint in that way, not in a different way, so it can't move or change. Unspecified means virtuous. It's neither virtuous nor non-virtuous. It was unspecified in sutra or ethically neutral. So an example of where we accumulate unspecified karma, and we do a lot of this, is when you think, oh, I need to water the plants, and you water the plants. To water the plants, you needed an intention. That mental factor of intention is karma. And is that mental factor of intention there virtuous or non-virtuous? It's neither. It's unspecified. Because in Sutra, the Buddha didn't say watering flowers is neither either virtuous or non-virtuous. Therefore, it's not specified. Therefore, it's ethically neutral. Immovable karma is where one achieves karma abiding. Meditates with karma abiding. So to use your specific illustration of generating bodhicitta and then meditating with bodhicitta single-pointedly. So there, while one's meditating with bodhicitta single-pointedly, one has different minds present and will be accumulating different karmic imprints. One will be accumulating immovable karma, because one is meditating with karma abiding. One is also accumulating virtuous karma because of the presence of the mind of bodhicitta. So there one is accumulating, maybe you could say different streams of karmic imprints. There's the virtuous mind coming from bodhicitta, and then there is, because one is meditating the karma abiding, also immovable karma being accumulated.
So from that meditation, you could have two propelling karmas, or more than one propelling karma.
So for ordinary beings, so not non-Aryas, so this includes bodhisattvas and paths of accumulation and preparation, as well as us lot, we will not accumulate these imprints together, but sequentially. So when one is cultivating the motivation of bodhicitta, one is accumulating virtue. When one is meditating with bodhicitta, with karma abiding, then one is accumulating immovable karma. And even for actual bodhisattvas, but ordinary bodhisattvas, it will be difficult to see them accumulating these two together in the same instant. Okay.
新年说的是这几度像有几了，这几度明显现在什么当这就迷惑了，新年公布。就像现在他们这个上学活动讨论这个什么什么当呢？今天明白的出这些年把用过嘛了吧？像是什么当个呢？没那过嘛的有的。那的今年这把这个当都是现在。
So there is more that can be said on this, especially in the context of ordinary bodhisattvas, but we can rather leave it there for today.